Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, just some house cleaning stuff I wanted to take care of first. I, the date says November 18th, which was when this show was originally recorded, but the day that we are recording it is actually Thanksgiving. And the reason we had a problem with it was this. I had uh, I had originally recorded this on the 18th, and I hate to admit this, but I went through the whole program. It was over an hour long, and went to go back and check it, and I had done the whole show with no sound. Oh, man. Well, and I mean, and that was the second show I had done that day, so I had no voice left, and there was no way I could go back and redo that. So I had to wait, and I thought about just waiting until next week, skipping a week, but I felt like, and I still feel like, the things that we're going to talk about today is kind of important, and I really wanted to kind of get the information out there as soon as possible. And I just felt like waiting wasn't the right thing to do. I may skip this week. I don't know, depending on if I've got anything I want to talk about. But today, the overall, well, before we get started, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And I don't know if it has to do with age or what, but for one of the first times in my life, I actually spent some time last night thinking about the things I am thankful for in my life, and the list is long. And I when I pray every day, I thank God for all the blessings, none of which I deserve. Um, so I sat down and I was thinking about all the blessings that I have, and in the world, as far as the world goes, I don't have much. I'm not much, but when you compare to the rest of the world, I'm extremely blessed. God is taking good care of me, and I appreciate that, and I am thankful for that, and I hope that I can always remain humble enough to acknowledge that God's in charge. God's God, and I'm not. So, but anyway, I spent this morning, Thanksgiving morning, with my son and his wife and my granddaughter. We went to breakfast, had fun time together. Um, and then the rest of today, I'm going to spend getting caught up on ministry stuff. Um, and I'm considering making Cornish hens for dinner. Takes a lot of effort, and I really am not into effort. But anyway, okay. So today, what I want to talk about is something that has been. I think it irritates most Americans when we think about um, dual standards. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at several different, seemingly unrelated ideas, and then I'm going to draw them all together at the end. And as we go through these, you will see that the overriding thing that they will all have in common is lawlessness has become acceptable, and I hate that. And every time we think about it, like we think about it in one area, but we don't at the same time think about all the areas in the same that have the same message. So let's start off with immigration, legal immigration. The people that instituted the rules for legal immigration in this country um, did not have our best interest at heart. They had their best interest at heart. And let me give you an example. One of, there are several uh, parts to legal immigration that are anti-American, easily anti-American. Um, and one of them is called chain migration. So let's say that a Mexican comes to this country legally, and he's either a citizen or he's an American, but he's here legally. According to chain migration, he is allowed to bring in as many of his family members as he wants, unvetted. So and they've done research on this, and they know that the average Mexican brings in 7 family members. Now, I want you to think about this. It does when they say family members, they don't just mean mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, kids. No, they first cousin, second removed, second cousin, third cousins, uh, grandpa's wife twice removed by marriage or something. As long as they are related, they get to come in legally. So for every one Mexican that we have allowed into this country legally, there is an average, not the exception, but there is an average of 8 Mexicans here. 7 they brought in by chain, and the one that we allowed in first. So 8. One Mexican coming into this country legally equals 8 legal Mexicans in this country. How long do you think it would take before they overtake us? Drive in southern Texas or southern California, and you'll see, not long. That is against our country. That has nothing to do with immigration. Chain migration has to do with votes, and that was done by the Democrats. Another one is called the lottery immigration. And how that works is the government sets a number, and I don't know what they are, but let's just say that it's 100,000 people that we're going to allow in this year legally. And at the end of the year, we've only let in 90,000. So we've still got openings for 10,000 people, right? So what they do is they look at the people that have come in, and they pick out some countries that are underrepresented, like countries in Africa or the ex USSR countries, and they contact them and they say, this year in immigration, you didn't have fair representation of the people coming into this country. So what we'd like for you to do is submit X amount of names with the application to us. We'll put them all in a big vat, and then we'll just draw them out. And whoever we draw out will become legally here in the United States. Okay, so that means, again, unvetted. We have no idea who's coming in. But that's 10,000 people coming into this country that we just reached our hands into a pot and pulled out the names. Now, let me ask you something. If I'm the leader of any country, and the United States says, "Hey," especially let's say African, because most of them don't like America, and I'm the president of that country, and the United States says, "Hey, send me a list of 5,000 names, so we can put them into a barrel." Am I going to send them doctors and lawyers and teachers and physicists and scientists? No. I'm going to send them murderers, rapers, jihadists, old folks, orphans. That's who I'm going to send. And you multiply that out, that's 10,000 people of the dregs of society all around the world that are coming to this country, unvetted. That has nothing to do with what's best for this country. That has everything to do with votes. Again, That law was done by Democrats. The Republicans have been trying to fix this, and Donald Trump, when they were talking about it, the Democrat says, well, if you give us citizenship for all the DACA kids, then we could talk about and I don't remember the number, 1.5 million DACA kids, then we'll talk about the immigration. So Donald Trump said, hey, not only will I give you 1.5 million, I'll give you 3 million. I'll give you 3 million of the DACA free citizenship. But in return, we want to get rid of chain migration, lottery migration, and get e-verify. And they just turned around and walked out. They wouldn't even discuss it. They do not want to fix this. And that's the problem. They are willing to let bad, illegal policy continue because they think it means power and votes rather than what's best for our country. So the Democrats are also against e-verify. What is e-verify? That would be a law that says everybody that comes to work for any company in the country has to submit their name electronically to verify, that's e-verify, that they are in this country legally and able to work. So if I go apply for a job, they'll run my name through it. They come back and say, yes, he's a U.S. citizen. He's fine. Pedro comes in and they send back and say, Pedro he's not here legally. He has no papers. He's not to work. Okay. That gets rid of the incentive for the illegals to come in. If we stop the jobs, they won't come. That's why that's critical. And that's why the Democrats are against it. They would rather want the illegals to come in to the detriment of our country rather than do the right thing. You say, well, why is it such a bad thing? Well, we're going to cover that next. Let's talk about illegal immigration. That was all the legal stuff. Let's talk about the illegal immigration. I cannot fathom in my mind how any American, Republican, Democrat, Independent, left, right, can argue against securing our border. I mean, of the few duties that the U.S. president is charged with in the Constitution, protecting our country is one of them, our borders. But the Democrats absolutely do not. This week, Donald Trump issued a presidential order, executive order, that said if anybody comes into this country illegally, you will never be allowed to apply for refugee status. Come in illegally, you can apply. Come in illegally, you can't apply. Makes perfect sense to me. But the Democrats went to court, found a judge in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and he stopped it. Issued a 30-day injunction. Now, that's a whole nother issue that we'll talk about another time, that one district judge can stop the president in an executive order. Now, he knows that it's legal. The judge knows that it's legal. But now what's going to happen? He gets a stay for 30 days. Then it has to go up the chain to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. There they take it whenever it gets onto the docket. Then we go through there, and they will, of course, uphold it, which means another 30 days or 60 days on top of it. Then we have to go to the Supreme Court, and we get on the docket whenever that happens. And it will eventually become okay. But in the meantime, the Democrats have bought a year before the executive order can be carried out. It's senseless. And yet they use the law to do what is not in the best interest of the American people. And I don't understand that at all. But let's talk about why it is so important that we get control of our borders. Let me just draw you a picture. Because the Democrats like to play this game where they're just uh, innocent people looking for a better way of life, and who are we to stand in their way? They paint this picture, and and when you hear stories of covered on the in the TV and radio, it's all about a sob story. Well, let me explain to you why it's first off, looking for a better life is not a reason for refugee status. It's a reason to come into this country legally, but you can't become a citizen. You can't get a green card just because, or you can't get refugee status just because you want a better job. Like that caravan that came up from Central America. If they really were interested in being a refugee, they would have stayed in Mexico when Mexico offered them refugee status. But they didn't. They came all the way up to the United States. Now, let's say a family of 4 come in, husband, wife, 2 kids. Rarely happens, but let's assume that happens. When they are granted refugee status, okay, no matter where they go to the top of the line for free housing. And you know, $1,000 a month. Plus they get um, public assistance. And I saw somewhere the average check is a little over $3,000 per month. And then they get food stamps, whatever that a number comes to. And we haven't even got to school yet. They get free education, whatever that costs. And let's not think about the cost. Let's think about now we have 2 Mexican kids that may or may not speak English taking up 2 seats in our public schools that you and I paid for. That means there's 2 American kids that are being displaced. So just so far, we've got an American family that is not going to get public housing because there's a Mexican family. We've got an American family that's not getting food stamps because the Mexican family is taking their spot. There's an American family not getting free medical because this Mexican family is getting free medical. There's an American family not getting public assistance because this Mexican family is getting public assistance. There are 2 American kids that are not going to be able to be in the same class that they would have been because, or and may not even be able to go to the same school because these 2 Mexican kids are taking their spot in that classroom. And in some states, these kids get free college education, which means there are now 2 American kids that are not getting free education because these Mexican kids are getting free education. Now you multiply that out nationwide and you say, well, that's, okay, so that's it's not that much. It is estimated that there are about 30 million illegal Mexicans in this country. 30 million. That's about 10% of our population. And you take 30 million times the money I just went through. 3,100 for public assistance. $1,000 a month for rent. 500 for food. What are we at? 5 grand plus medical. So 5 grand times 30 million is a lot. It's billions every year. Billions every year. Now, why Congress will not give $5 billion to build that wall would pay for itself in 1 year. just in the money we won't have to spend on more illegals. And yet, the Democrats are not willing to do that. They would rather give all the money, all the preference to the illegals and let the American people do without. I'm sorry, that's illegal. That's wrong on any way you slice it. That is wrong. It appears that breaking the law, if you're an illegal, is okay. Not only is it okay, but in some cities and states, it's encouraged. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, let's take a look at California. They are a sanctuary state. That means if you if you cross illegally into California, they're never going to send you back. Even if they catch you, they're going to do all the things I just said, plus give you a driver's license, plus give you a job. And if you break the law up to and including murder, they're going to put you back out on the street and not contact ICE, not kick you out of the country, but turn you back out onto the street. Americans don't get that right or that privilege. If you do the same thing that a Mexican illegal did, he walks free. As an American, you go to jail. And they're okay with that. Governor Brown is okay with that in California. And evidently, so are the Californians. They have the highest, second highest tax rate in the country. Well, it may be first now that they had to raise taxes. They had their debt wiped out. Now it's back. The state that I live in Illinois, Chicago is officially a sanctuary city, and the ex-governor, Republican Governor Rauner, who lost re-election, by the way, and one of the reasons was he signed a bill that in effect made us a sanctuary state. He says it didn't, but it did. We raised taxes because our deficit was so high, and then we raised spending to cover the tax increase. So our budget deficit, the last I heard, is the highest in the country. And we just elected Democrats. I think there's some end game here in Illinois is to run the deficit so high that they'll be forced to file bankruptcy and just forgive the whole thing. I think that's where they're working towards. That's the only thing that makes any sense. But think about that. All of the cost, all of the rules that are broken, all of the laws that are broken, all of the ways these Democrats are willing to twist themselves into pretzels and our country, and the laws they are willing to break to get what they want is absolutely unforgivably wrong. And they do it knowing it. It used to be they would do it by covering what they were really doing by justification. Now they're just all out with it. They're so far to the left now that they've taken the position, who cares? We'll tell the American people exactly what we want and we'll just make it happen. And they have. And in my world and in my lifetime, uh, when you take actions that is against our country, I call that treason. If you're not willing, if you think it's okay to let our borders be open and let foreigners come into this country and take our money and take our jobs and take our housing and take our women and take everything they want and ship it back to their country, I call that treason. These laws, they need to be elected out of office. They need to go to jail. They are not protecting our country. Let's talk about the elections that just happened, the midterm elections. I have never in my lifetime seen what I have seen in the last I did a show the weekend after the elections, and at that time I said that the Democrats needed 23 seats to take control of the House, and they got 24. I said at the time that we had won 6 seats, the 2 that were vacant plus 4 of the races. That is now down to 2 races that we have won, plus the 2. So now we're at 53. We now have a 53 47 seat advantage in the Senate. So you say, well, where did the seats go? As I said, I've never seen this before. Out in Arizona, which we had won that seat, but there's a Democrat out there named, and her nickname is Cinnamon Girl. Her last name is Cinnamon. And these are just some of, and I wasn't watching that race this closely, but here's what I know happened. The Democrats claimed that there was so much people wanting to vote, they opened up on election day emergency places for people to vote, which is fine. Unfortunately, they forgot to tell the Republicans. And because they were emergency, guess what? They found 500,000 votes after the races had been called. And of course, most of them went to the Democrat. And that pulled it out for her, and Cinnamon ended up winning that seat. The race had been called. It was over. Republicans won. Democrats found 500,000 votes, and it switched, and then it was declared. Cinnamon wins. Barely, by the way. In Orange County in California, the last strong place for Republicans in California, every Republican seat went Democrat 2 weekends after the election. Republicans had won those seats. But 2 weekends later, they managed to count enough until they turned those seats. Now, I talked about the lawlessness, the cheating, the conniving that is going on in these elections. And these Democrats are just out with it. They're not even trying to hide it. They kept finding votes in Florida a week and a half later. They kept finding votes in Georgia. The deficit was just too big for them to overcome. And they kept saying, well, there's no proof of anything wrong. Really? The last time I saw in Broward County, they had 110% voting record. Now, let me break that down for you. So, and I'm going to make the number simple so you can see. Let's say that there's 1,000 registered voters in Broward County. All right. In an off-year election, it would be normal for 400 to show up. In a presidential election, heavy turnout would be 600. In this off-year election, they had 100% plus 10% that we know was illegal. Now, in order for that to happen, let's look at the possibility. What is the possibility of 100% of the people showing up to vote? That would mean that they had perfectly clean voter registration. That means there wasn't anybody on there that had died, nobody on there that had moved in the state of Florida. Are you kidding me? Nobody had died in the last year. Nobody had moved in or out in the last year. Nobody was in the hospital. Nobody was out of town. Nobody had anything wrong. 100% showed up. That never happens. The 10%, that's voter fraud. Just plain. You can't have 110% people show up. That's not possible. You can't have more than 100%. So let's say that uh, let's just say that it was a really heavy year because of the races. And in a normal heavy turnout would be 600. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say 700 showed up. That would be a record. But let's just say that happened. That means there's 40%, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. That means 40% of the vote in Broward County is illegal. And you're telling me there's no proof? That is just outright theft. That is voter fraud. Now, I don't mean to pick on Broward County and Dade County, but those two counties are the only counties in the whole state of Florida that had any problems at all. And they were making up problems. The machines overheated. We keep finding votes. We miscounted. We mixed up the votes. I mean, it was one excuse after the other. They just couldn't manufacture 12,000 votes to overcome. But they got 3 or 4,000. And it's not just Florida. Here in the state that I live in Illinois, I haven't seen the numbers on this election, but in 2016, they did a big write-up in our paper here. There were 22 counties in the state of Illinois that had over 100% voter participation. 22 counties. The Democrats appear to me nationwide to have endorsed lawlessness. It's okay to be illegal. It's okay to break the law. It's okay to do anything as long as we win. I don't see anybody going to court. I don't see anybody going to jail. I don't see anybody being fined. I don't see anything. There are no consequences. No consequences. Now, the last I heard, the Democrats in the House went from 26 on election day, they gained 26 seats, to this weekend up to 42. 42. That means they increased their flips by over 50% after the races had been called. That is outrageous. 16 additional seats in the House of Representatives turned from Republican to Democrat after the races had been called. Now, you say, okay, well, things happen, and so they made a mistake. They made 16 mistakes in the country. Okay? All right. How many Democratic seats do you think flipped to Republican after the races had been called? Goose egg, none. Nada. Not one. So you mean to tell me that I'm supposed to believe that 16 additional Republican seats flipped to Democrat after the races have been called, and not one flipped from Democrat to Republican after the race has been called? That is not possible. That is lying and cheating and stealing and manipulating. Lawlessness. And I don't see anybody going to jail. I don't see anybody being fined. I don't see anybody calling for a massive investigation. When the senator-elect in Florida realized what was happening, he's a very wealthy man, and he did some things, and it probably saved a seat. One of the things he did was call the White House, and Donald Trump said he was sending down the FBI to investigate, and he promised he would get to the bottom of it. Okay, let me tell you what's going to happen. Nothing, and here's why. The FBI agents, boots on the ground, are good, probably good people, but they are going to find If anything, it's going to be minor stuff. They, unless I miss my guess, they won't even mention the fact that 110% voter participation. They won't even mention that. The problem is the people in charge of the FBI. They're all swamp rats, Democrats. And the people in Broward and Dade County are all Democrats. The people that are lying, cheating, and manipulating are all Democrats. One of the main characteristics of swamp rats are they protect themselves. That's how they stay in power. Nothing's going to happen. In my opinion, somebody needs to step in and say, all 16 seats that flipped afterwards, nobody takes the oath of office until the FBI goes through and does a thorough investigation. I don't care what your state registrar has to say, because in most cases, my guess is they're Democrats. I know in California they're Democrats. And I'm guessing in Florida they're Democrat. Nobody takes it off, and I don't care if it takes 5 years. Nobody takes the oath of office for that seat. You are not going to profit from cheating. And if we catch cheating, whoever is in charge, and I don't care if I can't prove that you did it, but you were a poll watcher, you're going to be fined to go to jail for 30 days. If I can prove that you did it, you're going to jail for a long time. Not only are they stealing elections, they are stealing our republic from right before our eyes. The only thing that makes us different from the other countries in the world is the peaceful transfer of power, which the Democrats did not do when Obama left. As he was walking out the door, he was organizing resist, resist, resist. All the leaders of the Democratic Party have not given over a peaceful transfer of power this time, for the first time. And the other thing that sets us apart is the certainty that our voting is above board, and they're not treating it like a banana republic by stuffing the ballot box or hiring people to fill out just boxes of ballots and hiding them in schools and buses. I mean, that's outrageous. Now, here's one thing that I think should have happen. As an example, the law in Florida is that all ballots have to be in by Wednesday at noon. And at Wednesday at noon, the county, the person that is in charge of counting those votes, they don't have to have them completely counted, but they have to say, we have X amount of votes here to be total cast. That number was never given, still to this day. 2 weeks later, we still don't know how many total votes there was. That's outrageous. Here's what I think needs to happen. In the state of Florida, and every state should do this, but I'm using the state of Florida because I happen to know what the law is down there. The law says that Wednesday at noon is the cutoff. So Wednesday at 11 a.m., National Guard people need to be dispatched to each and every county where they're counting votes. And at noon, nobody comes in and nobody goes out till all the votes are counted. And I don't care if you find 10 million votes, they are not to be counted. If you can't get them there in 18 hours, then you're cheating. Now, I used to be a poll watcher, and let me tell you how this works. You know, when you walk into the room and you vote, and they take your paper ballot or machine ballot and they put it into this box, okay? And the machine counts it, and then the paper goes into a box. At the end of the night, They take the box or boxes, depending on how many there are. They put straps around them. They have two people sign off on them. Two people loaded into a vehicle, and one vehicle follows another one to the county seat. They carry it in together. They drop it off together, and then they leave. That's the process. The cutoff really should be Tuesday at midnight. You can drive any county in this country in an hour. Why does it, why do they, but for the sake of things happen, like snowstorms or mudslides or, I mean, things happen. So, okay, Wednesday at noon. All right, I'm okay with that. But Wednesday at noon, we have armed guards standing outside. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out, no votes come in, no votes go out. And I don't mean one or two that might be sympathetic Democrats. No. You have a half a dozen at each building in every county in Florida. That'll stop. That will stop the lying and cheating. The only way that you could possibly find 500,000 votes a week after the election is over is by cheating. If you follow the process, all the votes should be in by midnight Tuesday night. You don't have two people put your ballots into a car, drive to a school, take it out, take a box out and leave it there, and then take the rest of the boxes to the courthouse. It doesn't work that way unless you're cheating. When they find those boxes, and I know this is happening, they follow the procedure just fine. But they have already had people filling out all these fake ballots. They call it overvoting or undervoting to the races that they want to fix. They've stuffed this ballot box and then they hide the box out in plain sight so that if they need it, they go find it until they get enough votes to get the outcome that they want. And that's evident by the numbers I gave you earlier when I said 40% of the votes in Broward County are illegal. 40%. That's outrageous. They are stealing our republic right out from underneath us. We have no trust. Okay, let's talk about more lawlessness, the uneven application of the law. There appears to have become a class of people in this country that doesn't get prosecuted at all. And that class is Democratic people. Now, we just talked about the run-of-the-mill county workers that are Democrats, that there's no consequences for their actions. Let's talk about the national Democrats, the swamp dwellers. Loretta Lynch should be in jail, okay? The IRS scandal where she was holding up the applications in Ohio, that's illegal. She should be in jail. Right now, as we speak, she is in contempt of Congress and nothing's happened. They're not going to go after her. She was allowed to retire and thumb her nose at Congress, retire with full benefits, and nothing has happened. And nothing's going to happen because they're protecting her. James Comey. He illegally took notes of a private meeting with the president and then took him out of the office of the FBI, which is illegal, and admits to leaking them to a friend of his to give to the Washington Post, which is illegal. And he lied to Congress, which is illegal. And he did all of this so he could get a special prosecutor to go after the president to get him out of office. All of that is illegal, and nothing's happened. But you know what he did? He went out and wrote a book, went on tour, and made millions of dollars. and he should be in jail. Hillary Clinton, she sold 20% of this country's uranium, which we are not uranium uh, sufficient. We still have to import uranium, but she sold 20% of what we do have to the Russians. Now you say, well, uranium's no big deal. What if I said she sold 20% of our aircraft? What if I said she sold them 20% of our tanks, or 20% of our military ships, or 20% of our submarines? Uranium is used to defend our country by making nuclear weapons. You can't make a nuclear weapon without uranium. And she sold 20% of what we need to protect this country to the Russians. That's treason. Bill Clinton accepted bribery in the form of speaking fees from Russia on 2 occasions that we know of it for $500,000 apiece. Hillary Clinton was selling the office of the Secretary of State, we know, for a fact, to the Clinton Foundation. Nothing's going to happen. She lied to Congress many times that we know of. She used BleachBit on her server to hide 33,000 emails that were illegal and lied about it. Four people lost their lives in Benghazi because of Hillary Clinton. And they pretended like they investigated, but nothing happened. And she lied under oath, and nothing happened. Now, I want you to ask yourself, if you had done just one of those things, just one, and let's take the least of those. Let's say that you were subpoenaed by Congress to turn over all of your emails, and you had 1,000 emails, and you gave them 50. And you said, well, I went through all of them, and these are the only ones that really applied. The rest of them were private. And they weren't. So you gave them 50, and the other 950 you eliminated, or you erased, and then you BleachBit. So in other words, you lied to Congress. You cheated Congress by not giving them what you were subpoenaed. So you broke the subpoena, and you lied, and you erased, and you covered up. Do you think you would be still walking around? You and I would be in jail so fast it'd make your head spin. But there seems to be a new class of protected people in this country, and that is Democrats. Because the courts are run by Democrats. The justice system is run by Democrats. And a lot of the elections are run by Democrats. So nobody's going to, like I said, when the FBI is dispatched down there, nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to jail. Nobody's going to be fined. They'll go down there, do a little research, and they'll make recommendations to fix it for next time, but nothing's going to happen. Just like it did in 2000 when W was down there. That should have been fixed then. Not going to happen. Now let's talk about the last piece of violence, or the last piece of lawlessness that is just as blatant as the nose on your face. Ever since 2016, the leadership Democrats in this country have been calling for physical violence against supporters of Donald Trump. And I don't just mean verbally. Let's take a look at the Mueller investigation. Has found nothing on collusion, but he's gotten people put into jail. And I'm going to talk about Paul Manafort, okay? This guy, 60-year-old male, ballpark. He was Donald Trump's um, campaign manager for a minute. And when Trump found out who he was, he fired him, or there was an incident and he fired him. He was just there a minute or so. So Mueller went back and he was trying to put pressure on Manafort to flip on Trump. So Mueller goes back years before Trump even knew who this guy was and found he did some money laundering or something with a job he had done overseas. And he should have been prosecuted for sure. So Mueller subpoenas him, takes him to court, sentences him very quickly, puts him in jail in solitary confinement for the last 6 or 7 months. 23 out of 24 hours a day, he's in solitary confinement. Now, think about what this guy did. He took money for a job he did and put it in a bank in the Cayman Islands or wherever it was. That's his crime. And not paying taxes on it, of course. And it was done years and years and years ago. And because of that crime, has nothing to do with collusion. But as soon as Mueller finds it, he gets him, subpoenas him, interviews him, prosecutes him, and gets him in jail so fast it made your head spin, and Hillary Clinton is still walking around. Manafort's a Republican, Clinton is a Democrat. Uneven application of the law. Even Mueller has a free rein to rain violence down on these people. Mad Maxine Waters, she gave that speech. If you out and you see them and you get out and you cause a crowd and you tell them they're not welcome here anymore, we don't want them here. She is promoting violence because of somebody's political beliefs. Obama, resist, resist, resist. Hillary Clinton, we're never going to have civility in this country until we're back in power. So you're not going to be, you can't even be civil until you're back in power? Seriously? That's what we've become? The Democrats have worked the system to where if they lose an election, it's because of racism and having illegal votes. And then the election is off, it's unfair, and we're just going to recount until we get the outcome that we want. That's where the Democrats have come to. The Republicans have not done that at all. And I don't know about Montana. I don't know what happened up in there, but I'm pretty sure there was shenanigans going up there. That is a Republican state. How that Democrat managed to hang on to that Senate seat up there, I don't know. It's possible that we had a lousy candidate. Like I said, I didn't watch that very closely, but she should not have lost that seat. It appears to me that there is a concerted effort for all Democrats at all levels of government nationwide to do anything they can to win and get power at any cost. Lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, beat, harass. I mean, think about that. What if the Republicans took the same view? Think about the confrontation that would cause. The only reason we have not had widespread violence is because the Republicans have not taken that tack. The problem is that's coming. I remember when I started doing the right-wing Reverend, the one thing that I complained about the most was that the conservatives have lost their seat at the table, and we were sick and tired of it. Even in the Republican Party, the establishment had taken over, and the conservatives didn't even have a seat at their own table. That's what brought Donald Trump in. And now, again, the Republicans in general, but the Tea Party specifically, we are losing power because of cheating, lying, manipulating. And there's going to come a time when that is no longer going to be acceptable. And we will start playing the same game, and we will start fighting fire with fire. And when that happens, it's going to get ugly. I have called and called and called for the leadership in the Democratic Party to denounce violence, to denounce lying, cheating, and manipulating, and starting over for the sake of our democracy. They are eroding confidence in our voting every time we have an election. People trust it less and less. I trust it less and less now, and I watch this stuff really closely. When they talk about resist, 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 that is not treason, but it is sedition. Look the definition up. These people that are calling for this, Obama, Lynch, Comey, Clintons, they are all guilty of at least sedition. And the ones that have done outright illegal things like the Clintons and Obama, they're guilty of treason. We had 16 House races that switched to Democrat because of recounting in this country 2 weeks after the election. That is outrageous. Now, and I saw this online. Every every time we have a Powerball lottery ticket picked, there are millions of tickets that are sold nationwide. They don't have names. They don't have histories. They just sell the tickets. And within 10 minutes after they pull that number, they know what state, what city, and what store and at what time that ticket was bought. And we can't get our damned election people called within a week after it's done. Are you kidding me right now? The only reason that's not happening is because of cheating. We need to come together. And the longer this goes on with the Democratic Party, the harder it becomes that that's going to happen. But I am calling once again on the Democratic Party to stop the resistance, to stop the lying and the cheating and the manipulating and the vote changing. And because you are wearing down, number one, the trust in our elections. You are stealing what has made this country great for over 200 years. You're stealing that away. Please stop. Because at some point, just like when Trump got elected, at some point, the conservatives are not going to take it anymore. And then, Katie bar the door. Because when it gets ugly and the conservatives finally have had a bellyful, then it's going to get really ugly. Violence is going to happen. And unless you reel it in, it's coming. I'm telling you. There are 16 people in Congress now that should not be there, at the very least. There are 2 senators that were elected on election night that are not in the Senate that should be because of you Democrats. That's not right. And God knows how many statewide seats. That's not right. The overall theme of this show today was lawlessness and how it is affecting our country. It is causing our country to become a third world power. It is causing the things that has made this country great, is making this country a banana republic. It is causing half of our population to lose confidence in our system, which is fine with the Democrats. All they care about is the power. And I know that sounds hard to believe. But the leaders in the Democratic Party would rather see this country become a third world country and then be in charge than to have this country stay who we are. They don't want America great. They want America broken so they can refix it the way they think it should be. It's okay to have differing points of view, but this country has always come together to make things right for the betterment of our country. I think if you set the Republicans and the Democrats in the same room, the leaders, and said, it's our job to secure the borders, can we agree on that? I think reasonable men and women would all say yes. And then you went down and you took step by step what to do. We could come to an agreement. Instead of my way or the highway. And the Democrats are saying not only is that not okay, but first off, we're not going to sit down with you. Then we're never going to vote with you. They voted in a block the whole 2 years. No matter what the vote was, it didn't matter. Trump didn't get one vote. I take that back. Joe Manchin voted for Kavanaugh, but only after he had it secured, just so he could go back and say he voted for him. Crook. What makes this country great is the things that no other country on this planet has ever done. And the Democrats are destroying that inch by inch. And we had better stop them. Because as long as they're getting an additional 16 House seats, an additional 2 Senate seats, plus unknown state seats, and nobody's going to jail, nobody's being fined, nobody's being fired, no consequences, why would they stop? Something has to change. And once again, I'm begging the Democratic leadership to please, please stop. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about this week. That's why it was important that I get this out and done. It's an important message, and it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be out there. This show, like all the other shows that we do, are produced by the Prayer Box Ministry. Go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. There's lots to do over there. You could do one thing a day for the next 7 years and never repeat. There's that much to do over there. Go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. Well, that's a show, everyone. You have a blessed week. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.